Oh, no.
Good evening.
Zoom call.
Oh, nice.
My name is Charlene Reinders, and I am honored to be the program director of the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake City. And tonight's meeting is a joint effort between the League of Women Voters Salt Lake and the League of Women Voters Utah. So I would like to welcome all of our members from both leagues, our guests, our speakers, and really excited for this meeting tonight. Before we start, it's our tradition to begin these meetings by acknowledging that we are gathering on Indigenous land. The Salt Lake Valley has always been a gathering place for Indigenous peoples, and we acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute people, is a traditional and ancestral homeland for the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute nations, and is a crossroad for Indigenous peoples. We pay respect to the elders, past and present. We also consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that are our history and legacy, and seek to uncover the truth. For 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a nonpartisan, activist grassroots organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy. We encourage informed and active participation in government work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Simply put, our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. A recording of tonight's event will be made available to the public on the League of Women Voters and Salt Lake and Utah websites and on our social media. Other recordings of this event, whether be in person or on a computer, may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio visual of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on the event. So before we move to the panel discussion, I'd like to know if there's any new members that have joined the League since our last general meeting. Would you stand and wave? Oh, welcome. Okay. Thank you. Are there any new members on Zoom, Lee? Don't see any. Okay, we have had, at last count, over 200 new members this year. So we're really proud of that. The Salt Lake League. Okay. So we will start with the panel discussion. We will then take questions from the audience, both live and on Zoom. And then we will conclude with some short announcements. So I would like to introduce the panelists. We have Elaine Clark, News Director from KUER. Robert Gehrke, reporter, Salt Lake Tribune. Professor Jacob Nelson, University of Utah Communications Department. Emily Means, executive producer, Salt Lake CityCast podcasts and newsletters, right? And Max Roth, Fox 13 news anchor. So each speaker is going to introduce themselves, give a short bio, and then Professor Nelson is going to moderate the rest of the discussion. And then after that, we will turn to Q&A.
Just kidding. We're going to skip the introductions and go straight into the conversation.
Yay.
And maybe each of you can say a few words about what your roles are at your places as you're answering the questions, or not. You know, who cares? Okay. So I am going to preface my first question with a number, and that number is 28%. That is the percentage of Americans that have a good or great deal of trust in the news media, according to Gallup, as of a couple of weeks ago. This is like the latest survey data. It's updated each year, and it is the lowest on record when it comes to trust in news media. I have spent a number of years researching people's trust in news. I teach about people's trust in news, and so I have heard a lot of what people dislike about the news medium. And what I've also heard is that local journalism for many people is the exception. And so my first question for all of you is, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you think it is about local journalism that makes it exceptional, from the public's perspective, and what you do within your own role to help build trust with your audiences. And Elaine, I'll start with you.
You mentioned that 28%. Did you have a data point for trust in local journalism?
Gallup doesn't do
comparatively?
it. It's just news media generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there are data that suggest that people do have more trust in
Right.
local journalism than they do in the news media.
Well, I think it's because it's about people's lives. They can see themselves in it. They need it to navigate, and they can test it in ways, right? Like they have a sense of what's happening in their community, and they have questions about it. And I think in some ways they can bear those out. You know, if somebody makes a broad cultural statement about life in rural Utah, someone can say, yeah, that absolutely reflects the life of my great aunt Jane, right? And or politics. I've been watching the effects of these voting patterns for years, and I know how it plays out in my life. And so I have a relationship with the journalist and the outlets, and I've seen their work bear out in the past. And so I'm here for it because I still need this information to get where I want to go, to get my kids to school, to get to work, to help my mom get into housing development, whatever it may be.
I think I resonate with what you said, and what also strikes me is that we're here, we're approachable. They see us on a regular basis. And I remember when I first came, I grew up in Utah. I grew up in the Ogden area. I was out of Utah for 6 years for school. When I came back, when I got the job in Salt Lake City, I was so excited that I got to report next to Rod Decker. I'd watch Rod.
I like how you say that in a whisper.
Rod Decker.
Rod Decker.
And I did grow up watching Rod Decker. I've been a political junkie my whole life, and as a Utahn, a political junkie, he was the guy who really knew Utah politics so well in the TV media. Also, I was very excited because Dan Baumus was at all these press conferences I went to, and he was with KUER, and I'd listened to him on KUER for a long time, and just felt like, oh, this is good company. And now here I am, Emily. When I got here, Emily and I met when I got here. I was the old guy who someone had watched their whole life.
Yeah.
This
is a real full circle moment.
Yes,
For me, personally.
I really love that. I mean, that's it's something you realize as time goes by, you kind of grow into different roles, and people watch us do that. And Robert has been in Utah media longer than me. There aren't that many who have. But Robert's one of them, and I trust Robert. I know I've known him for years, and I've known his work for years, and I know he cares about Utah.
Yeah, I mean, no offense, Max. I've been watching you since I was a child, so this is huge for me and my mom if she's watching right now. But yeah, I mean, local news is completely our bag at CityCast. We have our finger on the pulse of what is happening in our communities because we live in those communities and we have a stake in, the news that's coming down from Capitol Hill or from the Salt Lake City and County building or from this county council table, right? I think what I hear from our audience is, the information that we provide to them, the analysis of what's happening in our neighborhoods, it gives them a sense of hopefulness and makes them feel less helpless. And that's personally how I feel when I read national news headlines. I feel like I can't do anything about them, right? But when we're talking about local, it's closer to the people and you're closer to making an impact when it's something that's happening in your community. So that's why I think people trust our rundown from the legislative session or of a city council meeting, because it's something that they can actually have an impact in if they choose to participate.
I guess I'm going to be the downer of the group because I think I agree with most of what they've said, all of what they've said. I agree with all of what they said, except for Max, saying that I'm respected. I think it's largely true that in the past, the local media has been a little bit more immune from the mistrust and sort of the skepticism that people have. I think I've seen in the last decade a lot more of that filtering down to the point where obviously the Tribune is seen as a leftist organization. Right? We're Antifa now, apparently. But also, KSL has been attacked by conservatives for being too liberal. It's not, it's the trends that are driving the mistrust in national media, I think, are also trickling down into local politics, but also the local perceptions of the media. And so we, kind of echoing what Max said, part of the reason we're here tonight is because we want people to recognize that we're not some faceless, demagogues with an agenda to corrupt the minds of your children. It's that we're doing this because we have good intentions, and like Emily says, we want to empower people to make good with good information to make good decisions. Now, whether that translates and whether people buy that or not is up to them. But I think the more that we're out there saying it and meeting people where they are, the better. But I am concerned about, obviously 28% on the national level is horrible, but we have to work every day to try to maintain trust at the local level too.
So I'm glad, Robert, that you brought up you want to sort of present yourselves as like your people, like journalists are people. And so my next question is in the spirit of that, and it is, what first got you excited about doing journalism? And considering all of the challenges that journalists are currently facing, what still excites you about doing this work? Like what keeps you going despite how hard it is to do this job and earn public trust and, work for news organizations that are struggling financially and all of these very, very difficult obstacles that you face?
I think it's a sickness.
Yeah.
No.
Robert, I'll start with you and we'll just go the opposite direction. Yeah.
So when I was a little kid, I maybe was a little bit of a weirdo. I loved I loved getting the Sunday paper, especially, and like it was huge and I was little. And so you would lay on it and get covered in newsprint and like read everything about it. And the sports section was just mind blowing to me. The funnies, I would go to my little league games and come home and write the story about the little league game. I always did much better in the story than I did in the little league game. But it was always something I always liked to write. And so there was that element to it. I had an older brother who was very involved in politics and kind of got me interested in politics, and he went down the political road. And I kind of decided that I wanted to be more of a trying to tell people what's going on. I'm not going to try to convince you. I'm going to try to tell you what's happening and you can make up your own mind. And so that's sort of how I ended up in this. I had decided I wanted to be a journalist probably from the time I was about 12 years old. And kind of pursued that path and was lucky enough to end up here. To your point about, to your question about the difficulty of it, I mean, I've been doing it for close to 30 years now, and it has gotten a lot more. I worked in DC for about 7 years. And when I was back there, it was during the second Bush administration. And it was getting ugly out there. The national political scene was pretty caustic, and I burned out on it fairly quickly, and came back here, and it was sort of a relief to be back home and in a political environment that was a little bit more genteel and maybe even keeled. And now I've kind of sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. But now it's we're seeing it, like I said, trickling down to where we are. And it is incredibly challenging. I think still at the end of the day, I keep doing it because I feel like I have seen it make a difference. I have seen that sometimes an occasional story that you do will kind of punch through the din and reach people and shape perspectives, or at least inform people in a way that will shape their perspectives and shape policy in a way that is beneficial or at least, you know, improves society, I hope. It maybe happens less often than you would like, and it can be a grind, but I think that's sort of what keeps me going day to day.
Yeah. I feel like I hear that from a lot of journalists, that they knew they were always destined to be a journalist. That was not me. I was going to be a doctor, and then I flunked out of organic chemistry and changed my path because the communications major at the U only takes like 2 years to finish. So that's how I ended up here. But you know, my first internship was at the Salt Lake Tribune, and you know, just surrounded by these legendary reporters in my state. I don't know, I was really inspired by them. People like Gehrke. I was, you know, one of my mentors at the start was Jennifer Napier Pierce. And I just saw, you know, the passion that they had for their craft and for informing the public in a way that could really make a difference. So that really spoke to me. But I think, like, for me personally, I am kind of a nosy busybody, and I like to ask people questions, and I like to hear their stories. And really, it's kind of like the cherry on top if a story that I help them tell can have an impact. So that's what keeps me going and how I got my start. And it's getting tougher and tougher. There are a lot of people in my age group, a lot of journalists around the same age as me, who have totally burned out. They've changed their careers. They've moved on from journalism and into, you know, different types of comms jobs. And, you know, I might go that path someday, but for now, this is something that really feeds me. And yeah, I'm sticking with it, at least for a bit.
To just reiterate something Emily said, it is true that this is something that we do because it's a passion, not because it's profitable. Any of us could walk out the door at any point in our career and double our money doing basically the same thing we're doing, just doing it for a corporation rather than the public.
And being yelled at a lot less.
And being yelled at a lot less. And so it really is an addiction or a passion, whichever you want to call it. So Max.
And ego. I'll just throw that out there.
Oh, yeah.
We're being honest.
Yeah, there, of course, there's always some of that. And it's good to acknowledge, because one of the things you want to do is acknowledge your humanity. And know your bias, because first of all, if you don't have a bias, then you're not a thinking person, and you shouldn't be a journalist, because everyone has opinions. So you need to know them so that when you're reporting, you can filter them. If you're not aware of your bias, then it's controlling what you say rather than you understanding how it impacts you. Pardon me. I'm going to say something that really struck me as true, that a lot of people don't really get when I say it. We'll see if you guys do, which is that the difference between a politician and a political reporter is that politicians liked summer camp. And I grew up passionate about politics and about news, but I watched political news. I really passionate about that and believing in the American experiment, much like the League of Women Voters has always done and worked for. I mean, it's been an abiding passion my entire life, and it's been hard the last few years. It's really been traumatic, quite honestly, because you see the American experiment has been in trouble. And it's kind of hard to know how to navigate that, because it's so important it's important that a public is informed. One thing that so I didn't know that I was going to be a reporter all the time, but it just kept coming back at me. I kept trying different things and then realizing, you know what? Yeah, I really believe in this nonprofit I'm working for, but man, am I horrible at organizing anything. I'm good at communicating. I can write and I can talk. And so it really made sense, and it felt like a calling. It still does, but it's hard to know in an era where facts are so often just not acknowledged, that you try and figure out how you can communicate when things are so polarized.
Like Emily, I did not take a traditional journalism route. I did not know what I would be when I was a youngster at 12 years old. I read the funny pages. But in college, I ended up studying folklore, which the best way that I can really sort of describe it is, we have history that is about the kings and the kingmakers and the politicians. And we have folklore, which is the story of the people. And that I had intended on a career in academia. And I did my master's degree at the University of Utah in Arabic and spent a year in the West Bank and interacted with a lot of journalists there. And I came home to finish my master's thesis and was really disenchanted with the idea of the ivory tower, that these really important stories that I had gathered, were going to sit on a shelf. And I would not recommend this thesis to anybody to read, trust me. But that it would sit on a shelf and it really wouldn't make any sort of difference. And that sort of became my path. I went into nonprofit administration and found my way back because I really missed research. So I went back to KUER as a producer for Radio West. And that sense that the people have a story to tell that really reflects the impact of the decisions that people of power have remains very critical to me. And I think we work really hard in public media but in the work that everyone at this table does to reflect those voices. So it's not just about the law that's being passed. It's about the family whose life is going to change because of that law. It's the story that they tell. And that's what drew me to journalism sort of late in the game, right? Why do I stay? It's a lot harder to answer. It really is a vocation. I mean, we keep using the word passion. And at some point, I watch the algorithms and I see the stories that fly by me. And more I see the AI stories, which, are so full of malarkey. And I just want there to be something fact checked out there. And so I'll fact check all my reporters till the cows come home.
Yeah. So you've all, in your responses, been alluding to some of the challenges that journalism faces today. And I'm curious to hear you elaborate on what those challenges are. What do you think of as the biggest challenges that journalism as a profession or your news organization specifically currently faces, and what are you doing to overcome those challenges?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All the challenges with journalism. Let's see. Yeah, the AI slop is a big one for sure. And, having to be the one in your friend group fact checking all of that for your friends. I don't know if that's what your group texts look like, but that's what mine look like. I guess I'll speak from CityCast perspective. We are pretty new to this extremely rich media landscape we have here in Salt Lake. We're very lucky to have that. But no one knows about the work that my team is doing. We put out a podcast and a newsletter every single day. We think they're pretty damn good. it's fact checked, it's well researched, and we are aiming to connect people in our community to information, again, to empower them to make decisions for their families, or even just to, I don't know, find a new small business to patronize, right? But there's so much noise that it is hard for us to kind of rise to the level of, okay, this is CityCast. We know what they're doing. They're a known commodity in our community. And we want to be that. And we have to be that to continue to do the work that we do. Our audience needs to grow to continue to do the work that we do. And I would guess that's probably the case for everyone at this table, right? If no one's listening, then you can't keep doing the thing. So that's a huge challenge for us. And yeah, I mean, everyone's attention span is really short, and I can't blame them for that. There's headlines coming at us every second from every which way. So it's hard to, stake a claim.
Yeah, I think those challenges. They're the economic challenges which hit me. I'm a head in the clouds kind of person. I don't. I'm glad that there are salespeople who get things done so my paycheck comes through. But I'm not always thinking about those things. And then you realize, oh, we have to let people go because we're not making as much. We're being sold. Boy, I hope it's not this company, and those sorts of things are, they've been coming at this industry for quite a long time now. I'm glad that Emily's up here because I think, first of all, podcasts are a wonderful way that people kind of stretch their attention a little bit. I listen to podcasts so much, even some of I'll listen to Radio West via podcast. And it's and we need those things because it's a way to develop trust in kind of an intimate way that helps continue journalism at a time when some of the more traditional formats that maybe Robert and I are representing a little bit up here. We're trying to figure new things out. The world has changed so much, and so figuring out how to live within this new era of the digital age is tough. And so, yeah, I guess.
Well, building off of that, and some of you may have heard that public media federal funding got cut. We're at a real inflection point at this moment, and trying to figure out how to live in that space. I think it's interesting for sort of legacy media like television news and newspaper and radio, because we've been doing it this way for so long. We have to be nimble, and we have to be creative in ways. I mean, creativity in terms of craft is one thing, right? Radio, I can be creative about. If somebody comes to me, which they have, and okay, pretend you're building a newsroom from the ground up. What does it look like? And I'm like, radio, but even for the newer platforms like podcasting, I mean, things change so quickly today. The attention of the audience moves so quickly. I brought someone onto our digital team who was doing tremendous work for us in growing our Twitter audience. And then Twitter changed on a dime. And suddenly this investment that we made in that person's work is done. It's over. So where are we going to move that to now? So we've been building building our newsletter. You have a fantastic newsletter. I remember when, sending emails to everybody was so irritating, or, that it may come a time in a few years when, I'm reaching peak inbox. I can't keep up with all the newsletters I'm subscribed to. we've been all investing a lot of work into building a newsletter audience. That could change in a couple of years. We're building an Instagram following and have a lot of work to do. And so we're thinking, wow, our Instagram following is really building. Let's invest more in that. Who knows where that will be in 2 years? And I think that question of being nimble in a way we've never had to be nimble before is terrifying. As long, though, the hope of it is, though, that at the core of everything we do are our journalistic principles and our storytelling skill set. If we can apply those and be nimble about where we apply them, hopefully we can meet people where they are.
It's such there's a really strange dynamic that you're getting at there. That is, imagine if you're working at a store, say, and nobody's coming to the counter, but your job is to be at the counter. And the phone is ringing off the hook, but you don't answer the phone. So the phone just rings and rings and rings. It feels a little bit that way with TV and digital sometimes. And I don't know if it feels that way in other media, but there's that sense in which my job is to work towards having a show ready, or to work towards having a report ready for television. And that's what my whole work life revolves around, is finding the story, getting it done so it can be on the air. At the same time, our digital audience dwarfs our on-air audience. I don't have those. I don't have that muscle memory. There's to just click into social. I hate social media. I just hate it. Even though I recognize that some good things happen there. Yeah, that's it is very hard to be in an industry that suddenly has become so much about something that is not what your whole career is structured around, or your company is structured around, or your media is.
And will be something different in another year.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've covered it well. I mean, the economics for the Tribune, we were on life support a few years ago, when we were owned by this venture capital fund that was bleeding us dry, and we would not have been here had we not been purchased and turned into a nonprofit. Which has been sort of a second life for us. But we were fortunate. I mean, you probably know the data off the top of your head about how many newspapers have are now defunct over the last 20 years. I think it's something like 40% or something like that. It may be higher. So the economic challenge was real, but I think Emily kind of hit on it too, with the AI slop that's sort of jet fueled with the algorithms. Mark Twain said the lie can spread halfway around the world before the truth can put on its pants. He didn't even have the internet. Yeah. And so it's gotten so much worse now, and is perpetuated, and I think by rage merchants who have an incentive to spread mistruth and misinformation to try to divide people. And we're trying to straddle this divide and keep, hold it together by fact checking things like Elaine said with that we see that are untrue, or by providing people reliable fact check vetted information that's not trying to sensationalize things. That's not necessarily what people want in this environment. We're trying to sell broccoli, and everybody wants candy with meth in it. And so, sorry. And so, I think that's the challenge, is just trying to meet people where they are, because we have to be present in these social media worlds too, because that's where, I have a 24-year-old daughter and a 21-year-old son. I'm sorry, Max, they don't watch TV, and they don't really listen to the radio, and they sure as hell don't read the newspaper.
My kids and my wife don't watch TV.
Yeah. My daughter, actually, when she was in 5th grade, I got a call from school, and she said, "Hey, Dad, do we still have that stack of newspapers in the garage?" I'm like, "Of course we have the stack of them. You thought it." And she's like, can you, we're talking about newspapers in class. I'm like, "Oh, here it comes. They want me to come in and talk to the class." And she's like, and I was hoping you could bring him in, because there was only 2 kids in her class of 35 students who'd ever seen a newspaper. So, so we are that ship has sailed. We've got to be present on social media and meet people where they are. And that's really hard, because I'm not a natural TikToker. You might
I saw you on Instagram this week.
I-
You look good.
Yeah, you see my dance moves. But I think that's the challenge, is trying to adapt to the future media environment, like peer around the corners, and be there ready for it with the tools that we have, and still maintain the integrity and credibility that we have been trying to bring to it for the span of our careers.
Jake, I'm sorry. Table full of journalists. We have to turn this on you. We must ask you
Oh.
questions.
Okay.
What do you think is the greatest challenge from your perspective as a researcher, not like boots on the ground?
Table?
Yeah, no.
Okay. I think that Gehrke put it really well. I mean, I think it's the economics and the digital platforms. And I think that it's the overlap between the two. And I think from my perspective in the research that I've been doing, which draws on interviews with the public to understand how they feel about the news, it seems to me, based on what they're saying, that the economic challenges that journalism is facing, and also the just vast array of competing narratives about what's going on in the world that people find on social media, make them feel, first, that news organizations don't care as much about the truth as they do about making money. And two, that journalists are not necessarily as credible, are not necessarily as expert, like do not necessarily have more reason to be trusted than a news influencer, someone who is coming across as maybe quote unquote more authentically, that they see as being more credible because they are not, from their perspective, affiliated with a compromised corporation.
I think that's really interesting, because I've seen a lot of people, they're on Twitter and Instagram, and they very clearly are passionate about what they're doing. But as a journalist, I can look at this and say, well, it's clearly bogus because of this and this and this, but they have, they're this rising number of followers who are as passionate about these things as they are. And so it's just sort of, it spirals. I think that's an interesting point you made.
The one other thing that I would add to it is that people have very hard opinions. And, I have a student in my class who's here, so she's going to hear what I say all the time in our class, or what we're all constantly noticing. An assignment that I assign in my class is for students to go and interview every week a random person about their thoughts about and interactions with news. And so I've been reading 24 of these every week for 7 or 8 weeks now. Everyone has a hard opinion about journalism that's pretty negative. Very few people, if any, spend any time with news. And I think that's the challenge. Like, that's your challenge right there. How do you get people who are very pessimistic about journalism and also spend very little time with journalism to spend enough time with journalism to change their mind?
Yeah.
I would just like to add in, as we're talking about mistrust and the expertise of journalists, we're also living in an age where we don't trust the expertise of doctors or neurologists, or, be what it may, right? Like, I think we have access to so much information that we've also forgotten that processing that information and understanding it in context is a skill. So it's not just journalists.
Yeah, I was going to make the point that forum is media in crisis, and you could take out media and put just about any other any other institution in the country in front of that right now. Courts are in crisis, academia is in crisis, healthcare systems in crisis. All of these institutions, which have had large scale public trust in the past, I mean, over 70% of people trusted journalism back in the early 80s. Late 70s at least. It's now 28%. There's a crisis in trust, I think, among people, and it's being fueled by people who benefit directly from undermining those institutions that have been trusted for so long. Religion's in crisis. I mean, you can take your pick. Public education, teachers. It's every single institution in the country right now is being eroded because there are people who benefit from the destruction of those institutions.
And I think it's I think that the crisis is centered in some ways on this availability of information that's unfiltered. And so we used to be a filter. We used to be gatekeepers. We're not gatekeepers anymore. We're more curators. If people choose to have curated information, because we try and give you a general view of what's happening in the world so that you can go on with the rest of your life because other things are happening. But that's not generally how people consume news anymore. Instead, it comes at them. And I think that what that does is it really exacerbates this issue of people feeling like things are true that are not true. And part of that is because of this revolution, this internet revolution that's just continuing. But it feels like the world is more, it feels like our cities are more dangerous. They're not. Our cities are safer than they've ever been. But it feels like they're more dangerous because we have immediate access to every horrible thing that happens and access to everyone's opinion about how horrible it is. And that used to not be the case. Or we don't trust each other across, or people impact us. We think that people like trans people are out to get us, you know, and it's absurd. I mean,
and the legislature uses that misinformation to make laws that impact our communities.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a group that's the group that's the most vulnerable and being treated like they're villains. And it's because there are things that I think with this strange new world and so much coming at people, it's scary, it's unsettling, and we wind up, we wind up thinking or thinking that we know things that are not so.
How are you doing? Should I ask a couple more before we open it up to yeah, so some solutions.
What are we gonna do about it?
That's not our job.
You know,
we ask the question.
We don't solve things.
That's a tall order. So I'm gonna hold off on that one. The next question I'm gonna ask you instead is, what do you think is one of the biggest misunderstandings or misconceptions that people have about journalists?
That we all have superpowers and are devastatingly handsome.
Fact check.
Yeah.
It's only Robert.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone say that.
You don't hear that from your students' man on the street interviews?
Yeah. I think it's that we have a political agenda that we're driving, and some do, I guess. I mean, I think it's more common now for the old school objective journalist without us, because obviously you turn on Fox News or MSNBC, the news is being presented from a political standpoint. But I can tell you that the people in this room are not trying to convince you to think one way or another. They're trying to present to you the information that you need to know to draw conclusions. I think that's, you know, and it's driven a lot by if you see a story that's reported completely objectively, fairly, all of the evidence is presented equitably on both sides, somebody on the right's going to think it's told from with a liberal bias, somebody from the left is going to think it's from a conservative bias, and that, you know, you are a hack, and so we've got to, you know, we deal with that, but we strive for that balance, I think, on every story we do. I don't know.
I think one thing, I'll just speak for my team specifically. We are a team of young women, and one thing people misunderstand about us is that this is our job. Like, we get a lot of people who come up to us and say, oh, you make a podcast, but what do you do for your day job? And we're like, that is our day job. We spend every waking moment of our lives, researching, fact checking, finding good guests to explain issues to us, on the newsletter side of things, curating events, putting news stories into context. And I think what they misunderstand is that, it's just for fun. You think we do this just for fun?
Oh.
And we don't. We could do many other things that are way more fun. But I guess it speaks to how, some members of the general public don't take this profession seriously. And maybe it is because there are so many podcasts out there now, or there are news influencers or whatever. But yeah, we think that this is really important and extremely important to deliver factual information to our audience.
It is still fun.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know what else I would do, honestly. I do love what we do. But it's, but it is, but you're right. And that's what was striking me as you were talking, is it's a workplace, and you go into our station, and I'm sure it's the same at the others. You go in, there's a morning editorial meeting, and it's a whole bunch of people sitting around a table trying to figure out what's important and how to cover it. And it's very pragmatic, and it's and every single day everyone's arriving there with their best ideas and discussing them and getting assigned to something that you didn't come in wanting to do, but that everyone thinks is important enough. And we're real people who are doing a job the best that we can. And there are all kinds of dynamics in a newsroom, just like any workplace.
That good work takes time. Like, you'll hear a story on the radio that's minute 20, 2 minutes long. That could be 10 or 12 hours of work. That's research, finding your contacts, calling them, getting together with them, interviewing them, fact checking what they told you to make sure they weren't blowing anything up your backside. And writing, so it's accessible, especially like radio writing. Like, it has to be so plain spoken, which, thinking Mark Twain, right? I would have now I can't think of how the saying goes. I would have been shorter if I had had more time, right? And I don't think people understand the amount of work that goes in, because they're also being fed information constantly. We were doing some postmort today on the Charlie Kirk assassination with our NPR editor. And, we were talking about when something is reportable and when it's not reportable. And nobody up here can say they don't do it either. We're refreshing our phones every 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. The manhunt's on. Have we found him yet? Have we found him yet? Have we found him yet? And there are people who will give you answers. They may be wrong. They may be wrong. And that could really ruin someone's life. And yeah, good work is not always, I'd rather be late than wrong.
All right, I'll ask one final question before we open it up to questions from you all, and I will ask about solutions. The problems that we've identified are economic, they're public trust, they're challenges posed by social media platforms that are increasingly inhospitable to journalism. I'll just keep it simple. What are you doing in your work to try to overcome these challenges? Like, what do you see as a worthwhile means by which you can overcome these really, really difficult circumstances?
I'm going to jump in first because I kind of think we're all going to say the same thing. I hope. I think that, well, I'm actually reflecting it back on the general public and the people in this room, because you're here tonight and so you care about this issue, right? What needs to happen is you need to support local journalism. And that is, making sure to donate during KUER's pledge drive, becoming a Salt Lake Tribune subscriber, buying ads with Fox 13 or CityCast Salt Lake. I think that, that's the only way we can keep doing the good work that we're already doing. And on top of that, I would say share our work with your friends, with your neighbors, with your grandchildren, with, the lady you're sitting next to at Pilates. I don't know. People need to know about the good work that we're doing, again, for us to continue to do it. So is that what everyone's going to say?
Well, I
No,
could
that
have
was
said,
unique
okay.
and wonderful.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I could have said that, but I was thinking something else.
Okay. I'm excited to hear.
We have responsibility for the mess that we're in. I think for a very long time, because we've been trusted, because we've been seen as experts, we're going to give you the news that you need to know. Back to the broccoli, right? We're going to feed you your broccoli. Oh, you're not interested in the legislature? Well, aren't you a fool? This is what you need to know. We have to do a better job of communicating what all of this means in someone's life. It's not enough to tell them the facts. We have to talk about impact. They have to see themselves in the story. And that's what local journalism is uniquely qualified to do, because the people who are impacted are our neighbors. They're our kids' teacher. They're the people that we know and that we care about. And if we can't make our work centered on the audience, then why would the audience meet us halfway?
You mentioned in your last answer the Charlie Kirk assassination, and one thing that hits me that gets at why local journalism, I hope, is more trusted, and I hope we can continue to gain trust as time goes on, and hopefully maybe the world around us settles down a little bit. Anyone betting on that? Yeah. Oh my gosh. This so when the Charlie Kirk assassination happened, the first way we found out in the newsroom is that my son called me. He was there. And he was there with some protesters, but he was there, and he called, and he was scared and tearful and very amped up, and said, "Dad, I think Charlie Kirk's been shot. I mean, I'm calling you for the news." He was saying that. I think Charlie Kirk's been shot. And I was like, "What?" And then immediately the social media was also there, and we all found out about it. But yeah, I think our company, and I really like the corporation that did buy us, Scripps, because they do have some good they have some good foundation and concerns about journalism. But they also want those of us who've been around a while to open up about that kind of thing, and share that kind of thing on air. And it's not easy, but it's okay, and it's real, and so it's good. So it's good to do and show that we're part of the community as well. Another thing that I've started doing, honestly, self-preservation. Two things that I do. I started doing data reporting just so I could talk about facts, just so I could look at statistics and things like that and say, okay, these are the things in the news. Here are the numbers, like we're talking about crime or that sort of thing. Let's put this in perspective. Let's have context here. The other thing that I've started to do, and that I love that so many in TV hate, is that now I can shoot some of my own stories. And so I convinced the station to let me go on a trip once a month and go to some place in our broadcast area and profile that area, profile that place, just see who I meet. We call it Max Tracks. And once a month I go. I was just in Pinedale with my dog Chaco and my son Luke, and talked to the guys at the Mountain Man Museum there, and saw a wonderful bull moose, but when I go to these places, I'm meeting people, and those stories get a lot of traction online, and that's nice because then they can see us and think, okay, yeah, they came here, and they came here not because some kid had hurt another kid or something. Yeah.
I guess one of the things I've been trying to focus on is just the transparency element of it. Let readers know that I'm not making this up, that here are the sources that I'm citing on this, and make sure that they understand that there's work that's gone into this as well. And it's easier to do now than it used to be. I mean, obviously, when we would run a print edition of the paper, you couldn't do that, but now we can embed articles. Sometimes you write an explainer about how we reported this article, just so they understand the process behind it. I think peeling back the curtain makes readers appreciate it a little bit more. Trying to be a little bit more meeting people where they consume their news, which, as Emily said, I have been on TikTok. But if we're not there, somebody's going to fill that vacuum. So we need to be there with at least our version of good news, as opposed to the unreliable news that they might otherwise be consuming there. And I guess the third thing is sort of whenever I speak to groups like this, especially when I talk to teachers, I really want to emphasize the importance of critical thinking especially for young people, because we grew up in an environment where it was, not Walter Cronkite, but we had, the 3 television stations and the trusted, like Max said, we were the gatekeepers, right? And we controlled what was going out there. And I kind of liken it to, we have the USDA that goes and inspects your meat. They're the gatekeeper, right? There's no gatekeeper now, and there's no inspected meat. And so you're at the butcher counter buying meat that's not inspected. You have to think you have to be a little bit more careful about what you're putting in your body, because it could kill you or it could rot your brain, right? So we're trying to be a little bit, I emphasize the importance of encouraging young people, but everybody, to question the sources when they read a story. Is this too good to be true? Think about that before you share a story that might be false, it might be AI generated. Just all of these things that you can do to make sure that the information you're consuming is going to is reliable, or is at least trustworthy. And that way, hopefully we can kind of help people sort through the information that's out there, and focus on the more reliable, informed, and vetted information.
Thank you. Before we open up to questions, Gehrke, want to tell you that the way that you just said, I'm on TikTok, is exactly how every student I've ever encountered with says it, even though they are much younger than you are. Yeah. It seems to me that no one is proud to be on TikTok.
Well, I know my daughter is constantly on TikTok, but she doesn't have any posts on her account. She just goes and lurks and consumes and creeps around other people's pages, I guess. But it's where people, the data is that more, I don't know it off the top of my head, but the social media, people who are consuming all or most of their news through social media has skyrocketed. And so we need to be there too, because others will.
So follow Gehrke on TikTok at no.
Okay, so now we'd like to offer all of you the opportunity to ask questions.
I'm going to take the opportunity as a host to ask the first question, and then I'm going to say people should come up to either that microphone by Shauna to ask questions. You can come up and sit or stand in line. So my first question is a question I warned you that I would ask, which is, as individuals, of course, we should be supporting the media. As a organization, the League of Women Voters, what should we be doing? And in answering this, I just want to rise up 2 things. The League of Women Voters nationally has announced that we have a constitutional crisis, and we are pursuing a campaign of Unite and Rise to make sure everyone or as many people as possible can be informed about that. So your ideas about how we can do this best. And then secondly, you may know that the League of Women Voters Beyond registering voters also observes government in action. We have a legislative action corps that attends many committee hearings on the Hill. We have Observer Corps that goes to many local school board, city council meetings, and write up for each other what we are observing, but probably not disseminated any more broadly than to other league members. So given the crisis we face and the challenges you are undergoing, how can the League of Women Voters be helpful?
I mean, one thing off the top of my head is I believe your voter guide came out last week. We are also doing a voter guide, and I think there's room for a synergy there, I think, for us to work together on that in the future potentially, and make sure your work and our work gets a little bit broader distribution. You're a trusted source for information like that, and it seems like there may be room for cooperation there. The work that the league does, I mean, I've talked to Catherine up at the Capitol about you know, the things that are happening in this committee hearing or that, you know, we can't possibly follow all of the moving pieces up there. And so we rely on people who are in the rooms to let us know if something's coming. So you guys have been a very valuable source in that regard. What else? Come back to me. I'll think of something else too.
I love that we're being asked by this great organization that's done such good things and is doing good things in our community as we speak. We're being asked what more you can do.
I don't have any answers.
Yeah, it's like,
well,
it's
done a lot.
pretty good group. But I do think make news. We can't. We cover news, and we want to cover substantive things. That we want to cover things that matter. So when something happens, you know, or when there's something that's really important to you, and you guys have a finger on the pulse of a lot of things that are really important, do things that we can go cover. And you do. I mean, this isn't a criticism at all. But think about while you do those things, it's always easier to destroy than it is to build. And there are destructive people who communicate so easily and just cavalierly that you really have to think about, how am I going to communicate this substantive thing in a way that breaks through? You know, and that's a challenge. That's hard. But man, it's necessary. And so when you do things, make sure there's oomph.
I would also suggest there's probably room for collaboration on the voter registration part of it. I think, you know, we're not going to advocate register as a Democrat, register as a Republican, do this, do that. But voter registration and basic information like in the voter guide is not, it doesn't have a partisan tilt. So I think there's probably room for us. I think everybody would agree that the more people who are registered and the more people who are voting is a good thing. So I think we could there's room for work on that too.
Yeah, totally agree with Gehrke. We actually had a voter registration table at our big event this summer. And I'm not sure how many people were registered to vote that day, but I think that's a natural partnership between the media and the work that you all are doing.
Does everybody have to have a good idea?
No.
I've had something like that.
That's okay.
You
Next
have
question,
lots of
please.
Oh, I was going to say something about media literacy, that we can't be everywhere. And there's so much work to do in the schools, in outreach to other groups and organizations. And there's a lot of good media literacy programs out there, but helping elevate those too, like that seems really crucial to me.
See, you came up with a good idea. It just took a second. Who's up?
So, for just a moment, we're also having questions on Zoom. So we will ask people on Zoom if they want to put that question in chat, and we will take those as they come in.
Okay.
Me first.
You first.
No, I love that you mentioned synergy, first of all. We would adore if you could partner with us on voter guides. Our voter guide is amazing. We have a national voter guide. This is not what I was going to ask you, by the way. But one of our problems, and I'm sure it's yours too, is getting candidates to respond. Many of them, we live in very red Utah. They don't feel that it's necessary because they have no competition. So if you can help us with that, we would love it. Thank you very much.
We have not cracked the code on that.
And,
Sorry.
yeah, well, I was kind of hoping.
You know, I tell our young reporters, oh man, is that me? But I do, you know, when they say, you know, so-and-so's not getting back to me, say, okay, well, you've got the facts, do the story and say so-and-so won't talk to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you just
Trust me, that gets their attention.
Well, anyway, my question is, we've actually alluded to this before. We've been talking about external pressure on journalists. I'm interested in how you personally navigate internal politics. I know that most of your newsrooms have changed over time. I know Robert has been through ultimate, many iterations. How do you personally navigate that? And, you know, do you have hope for the future?
Just to clarify, the internal pressure, you mean like the pressure to perform or pressures to like what?
From your individual organizations? And, you know, are they telling you what to report or how to report it?
I see. Yeah. You know, one of the things that's been probably in the last 10 years, we now are measured by the number of clicks, the number of page views our stories get. And, you know, if you get a story that gets 100,000+ page views, you hit a home run that day, whether it's a great story or not. And I am a little bit privileged, I guess, in just that I've been there so long. It would probably take them longer to clean my desk out than to, you know, so I don't necessarily feel the same pressures that some of my younger colleagues probably do to hit quotas and things like that. And we've also, within the past year, unionized. We're nearing a contract, thank goodness, yay. So hopefully within the next month, we'll be signing a contract that will provide us a little bit of protection on the page view quotas that have been a problem. I think, you know, but at the same time, we need to give people not just broccoli. We need to meet give them something that they're interested in. If they're interested in something that is a legitimate story, then those page views can be helpful in helping steer us in a direction that, you know, I'm not just going to write about, you know, Taylor Swift all week because I don't know anything about Taylor Swift. She has a new album out. It's a banger. It's #1 right now, actually.
You know a lot about Taylor Swift, sounds like.
But, you know, so there is that. I guess that's the internal pressure I think I'd point to most directly, is just that constant pressure to write stories that are going to perform well online. They don't want us to write stories that fewer than 100 or fewer than 1,000 people are going to see. Which sometimes those are important stories, and you have to kind of fight back against that and say, no, you know, this story didn't do well, but it's still an important story.
Yeah, we run into those same kind of pressures at CityCast, although we have a lot of independence. Mostly every story that you know what, I'll say every single show that we do, it's an idea that came from our team, right? But the truth is that we are a for-profit company, and we do have, you know, we have goals in terms of audience growth. And we know from the data that our audience prefers some types of stories over others. And so we tend to serve up those types of stories rather than, it's like profiles and things. Those don't play well with our audience. But it also, it's just a fact that we need an audience to continue to, again, I keep hitting this point home, but we need an audience to continue to do the work that we're doing. And so we do lean into what our audience seems to want and the types of topics that they're interested in. And very rarely do we butt heads with our corporate HQ level over our editorial content.
I would be willing to butt heads with Robert over who's been through the most tumult in terms of ownership over time. I've been with 4 or 5 different owners since I've been at the station. But what happened when we had the economic downturn and our station, we were the only station that didn't lay people off during, we're talking about the Great Recession at this point, which was great. The recession wasn't, but the not laying people off was great. But the way that we did it was we put a whole lot more hours of news on the air. So suddenly we're on air. There are 2 blocks of time during the day when we're not on air. I mean, we have to, all the other stuff we have to do is in the studio has to be really jammed into these 2 spots. And so there's the internal pressure is to produce more and more stuff, and the demand to be able to do that. And then that becomes the internal pressure on the individual. And I find myself, you probably get the sense of this, I'm always spouting off and going in different directions. And so we're in the editorial meeting and I'll say, we really ought to do something about this. And that becomes my assignment. And then, but later on in the same meeting, it's like, but have we done this? I mean, did you know this and this and this? And it's like, yeah, go ahead and do that. And all of a sudden my day is, it's stressful, but that internal stress, we're not pressured by message really. It's really about getting the story and getting it done.
About topics, your question was no. Like that is entirely done. I'm very lucky. Our station manager is a journalist. Our executive director is a journalist. Like that's where our management came up from. So even though part of the university and eventually we answer to a vice president of the university, we have a series of very solid firewalls, which I am extremely grateful for, because not all university licensees in the country can brag that that's the case. There's actually been some real scandals involved in universities trying to influence coverage in a newsroom. I think there's I want to talk about the pressures from the perspective of the journalist and from the perspective of management. From journalist, I would say you're talking about more, do more stories. But also the other part of that is do it in more and more places, right? People came to me because they want to be a radio reporter. I'm like, hey, let's get on Instagram, and I've got reporters, and this is something that I'm challenged to navigate, who will not go on video. It wasn't in their job description when I hired them. How do I navigate that? And they have good reasons. It's not just because they think the camera adds a few pounds, right? They have legitimate reasons. Like life can be dangerous for a journalist these days, especially a journalist who doesn't necessarily fit the expected molds or whatever. So it's my job to protect them while also saying, okay, I need you to do a radio story and I need you to do a written version. And we'd really like you to go on video. And maybe, can we figure out a way we're going to put this all on YouTube, right? Like there's this acronym COPE, create once, produce everywhere. But you can only do so much in a day. There's only so much that can be done a day. So if you're being now asked to do, okay, now do 2 stories or do 3 stories and do those everywhere. Like it multiplies. Yeah. Anyway, and from the management side, especially with our funding cuts right now, we're thinking a lot about, we are nonprofit, so we don't have that profit mentality. That's like not where we've been for all of this time. And, we need stories that will convert people to loyal followers, listeners. I don't even know what to call our audiences anymore.
I think you call us members.
We don't have one. Well, we need to convert you to membership, but also we are driven by mission, right? And we covered the mayoral debate in Provo and the mayoral debate in St. George on Monday night. Those didn't get a lot of clicks because they were for the people in St. George and for the people in Provo City, not even Utah County, right? Provo City. Like we do a Salt Lake County mayoral debate, that gets a lot of clicks, but I'm not there for the clicks. So how do we convert that into donations or support? And, as a nonprofit, we can do that through grants, but that means we have to find partners with money who say, yeah, the St. George mayoral debate matters. The Provo mayoral debate matters. I'll give you guys money to cover that. Like we have to find those streams, because if we're going to stand by mission, we can't always serve up the stories. We have to do the broccoli sometimes.
Other questions? Do we have one on Zoom?
Yes, I have 2 questions on Zoom. I'll take them with the order that they came in. The first one is from attendee KR. It reads, I'm concerned that access to neutral news will become more difficult and trusted sources will all be behind paywalls. And we'll go with that one, and I'll come back and do the next one.
We won't be.
Yeah.
You do see things like, PBS now has Passport, right? Like they're finding ways to maybe serve it up differently or package it differently. So if you're a donor, you can get certain access, like early access or archival access. But, PBS isn't going to put a big thing on the TV screen that says, click here to donate, or, like it is built on trust. And so I think we have to be creative in those kind of ways, but at our core, and public radio has never had a paywall. I say that cavalierly, but might be the day that I'd have to leave. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm proud of what the Tribune's done in terms of we were the first legacy print publication to transition into a nonprofit status. I think the days of this is kind of funny, when the Tribune was sold to TCI, I think it was sold for about, or when AT&T bought it, I think it's sold for $217 million because newspapers were worth a lot of money at one point. Recently, when Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, it was $219 million. Wow. So that kind of gives you a perspective on how devalued news publications are. The days of newspapers being big profit generators are not coming back. I think the nonprofit model works well, and there are places like the Texas Tribune and other local online nonprofit news outlets that you can, I think, have done terrific work for one thing, but also are not doing it for a profit motive. And so I think that's sort of the future of what I see as the future of reliable, trustworthy unbiased information. Now, as far as the paywall goes, I'm happy also to announce that in January-ish, I don't have the exact dates, the Tribune's going to be dropping its paywall
Wow.
because we've been able to offset the money that we got through the paywall with donations and support from people who value it. Now that means if you're a subscriber, we're going to still want you to donate. We're going to be doing what Elaine does and hitting you up to be a supporter. But I think it's an important change, because if we are a nonprofit, if we are there to serve a community interest, then we should be serving the whole community and not just those that can afford the $10 a month to subscribe. So that's going to be a big change for us. And so my response to the question is, I hope so. We're trying new things, and some of them are working and some of them are not, but there are places that are, I think, beacons of hope.
Thank you. Our second question is, facts don't seem to matter as much now. Have you found an approach to get the facts to be considered?
We've tried to do fact checks on, especially on political ads in the past. They don't go very well, because honestly, people don't really care what we say the facts are. And but there are places like PolitiFact and Snopes that have made and then the Washington Post fact checker. They all have. Well, the Washington Post fired their fact checker, right? So I guess maybe you're right. The facts don't matter anymore. Wow. I mean, I think there is a role for us to do that, but in order to do that effectively, we have to be trusted first. So especially in a political climate and a campaign environment, we do some of that. But it's also hard, and I think these guys can probably attest to it in the daily churn of doing these news stories. We want to fact check everything, but sometimes the facts are not always as black and white as we might like them to be. And then you go down this rabbit hole of trying to learn everything about this. The legislature adopted these 3 tests for measuring whether the new congressional maps have political bias or not. Well, there's an old axiom that 90% of journalists can't do math, but the other 20% can. I spent two full days working through how these formulas work and whether they're good formulas. And then Sean beat me to the story. But it's so fact checking can be incredibly challenging. I guess that's the only point I was trying to make there.
There was a while where they kept telling me to fact check all the political ads, and it is hard to. It's because usually something is cited, in terms of what of whether it's a fact or not. I think the really important thing is to meet people where they are, and so to meet people when you're giving a fact, to meet people saying, "Hey, this is context, and I understand that what happened to this child is scary, but in general, Utah is a safe place for children. Utah is one of the safest places for children, and let me show you why." And so you have to do your best to understand why people are where they are in a place where they might not be amenable to just solid facts.
And I think that goes to one of the essential things that good journalism does that some of the stuff that is online doesn't do, is that puts things in context. The context of a story is every bit as important as the story itself.
Yeah.
Well, and Gehrke, you talked about transparency earlier, and we haven't done any voter guides this year, but we did last year, and said up front, 1, if you don't answer, we'll write it for you. So that's up to you. And 2, everything you tell us will be fact checked. That's a lot of work, because sit down and read something. You were born where? Were you really? Let's find out, right? Like it goes from there all the way through. But anything that what we did, if we found something that either needed more context or was inaccurate, or there were a couple things we actually went back to them and said, you know what, you said this, but we can't find it anywhere. You tell us where you got that from. Like, and we had a couple of people who said, yeah, okay, thanks for being so thorough. But that was all that was transparent. So we had footnotes where we wanted to give context or leave notes. Again, people don't understand. Good journalism takes time.
Yeah. We've done something similar to back when the Salt Lake City mayoral races were happening. What was that, like only 2 years ago now? We had on these candidates and they said things that were conflicting statements, right, in their separate interviews. And so we popped in, we had like a little voiceover and we said, okay, well, we checked on this because this candidate said that, this candidate said this, here's what we found. And we thought that was really useful to voters. And we have been playing around with the idea of just letting people know, having a disclaimer that when they're listening to our podcast, we have fact checked this information. And, we might need to make a cut or something if someone makes a claim that doesn't hold up. We haven't gone that far because we don't know if anyone will care or not. But yeah, it's definitely something that's on our minds.
Tell them.
Should we tell them?
Tell them. You do the work.
Damn it, we will.
You do the work. You should be trusted. Tell them why.
The only person in my family who watches me is my dad. And so I get fact checked all the time. When I was on our morning show, I remember, you're just half your vocabulary goes out of your mind when the camera goes on. And so I was just in my mind, it was a shooting and a police officer fired his gun. I don't remember exactly the story, but I was trying to come up with a synonym for gun. And instead of saying pistol, I said revolver. And I if I had thought about it, I would have known but anyway, as soon as I'm done with that live shot, phone rings, I know it's my dad. And I say, hey dad. And he said, I seriously doubt it was a revolver.
Somebody always has to keep you honest. We have an old investigative journalist from NPR who has lived here for years and is retired. And every time you open your email in the morning and you see an email from him, you're like, oh, yeah. What do we do today?
And that's why it's so important for us to make corrections when we get things wrong, right? That builds trust with our audience too.
So before I ask the audience to join me in thanking you, I want to just one more question. Okay.
I think it was Robert, you said that the media in crisis, and as long as a number of the other institutions, is because someone's benefiting from the media being in crisis. Who is benefiting from? Yes,
the royal.
And if you can't say a name, which I think might be not wise in some of your cases, is there a description like these? Who are
tall,
these?
dark, and
You want me to
handsome?
act it out? I think everybody assumes the easy answer is Donald Trump, right? But I don't think it's that simple. If you look at the vacuum that is being filled by partisan-driven media, it's not just the right that's doing it, and the people who are benefiting those are people who are driving a partisan agenda, and so I think. And also people who benefit from it financially for a various number of reasons, whether it's because they're selling crypto coin or whatever, but I think that you hollow out the media and then have this influx of social media influencer kind of people fill it, and they benefit from making things more sensational or provocative or partisan rage bait kind of stuff. And yes, it's happening on the right. It's been happening since Rush Limbaugh had started, this doing it on the right, but it's also happening on the left. There's plenty of liberal podcasts that are moving into that realm. There's liberal social media provocateurs who are trying to replicate the thing that the right kind of pioneered. And the right pioneered it because they felt like they weren't getting a fair airing in the traditional mainstream media, but also they pioneered it because people like the Drudge Report realized that there is a market for this. And so I think it's a creeping cancer that is helping to erode the trust in traditional media, but also there are people who benefit directly by perpetuating their political power and their political clout and making a bunch of money off it on the side.
And on
Yeah, there's a
that
happy note. Sorry.
With more things for the League of Women Voters to work against, let's join me in thanking our panelists today. Now I'm going to try to put a slide up there for announcements for the League of Women Voters, if I can make this thing work. No, it's whatever my computer does for me. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so I'm not going to read all of these because number one, we're out of time, but also just wanted to let you know that these are the upcoming events for the league. There is one that's not up there. We're going to have a Sandy City Candidate Forum on October 22nd. So I think you can read all of those. If you have any questions, let me know. You can go to all the website, League of Women Voters Salt Lake and League of Women Voters Utah for more details on all of the events. They're all on the websites with all the specifics. So any questions? And then this is the League of Women Voters Utah is having a civic advocacy workshop Wednesday, October 29th at 6 o'clock, and it's on Zoom.
Now Helen has a card for us to sign right up here. We're giving a gift basket to the hardworking county clerks, and thanking them for their hard work, keeping democracy going. And any league members that are here, we're asking you to sign the card. Thank you all.